Okay, back at number 13 here. We can see that we've gone into the sculpt tool, and we're actually using different stamps here to add much more finer detail. Now, first of all, you can see in the top right corner there in the layers tab, we've created a new layer, a new sculpt layer, and we've named it details. So again, just to give us more control over what we're putting down, and you can then easily later on either completely get rid of it or just bring it down in strength. So we got one of the default stamps that are there inside of Mudbox, and just lightly brushing it over onto the model all around. So we'll work on the skin there for a bit, and then we'll possibly make the stamp a bit bigger, and then make the metal area a bit like the different panels in that, make it look a bit dented and worn. So as usual, I was going to move on, but I'm just seeing that we're working on the lips there, so you can see that we do have sort of a rake stamp texture that we're using there to just basically lightly brush over the lips to give it the sort of lip look. And then we've picked up the leaf or the veiny one. We've gone back to the other one now. Obviously that's a bit too much. So I guess it did go over all the panels and using the flatten tool and just flatten them all down. So you can see it's just adding a bit of texture to the flattened down areas on the panels. If that wasn't in the last video, then it would have been just using the flatten tool, which you can see down there on the bottom left, and just basically going over all the areas that we want to be more metal, like the panels and the pads and that sort of thing. So flattening all them areas out first, and now just going in and wrecking it pretty much. So we're going in and adding some dense and worn sort of look to it, so it's not so much rusty metal, but looks a bit more like metal. And again, obviously, because we have a separate layer on this, we can then go in and start masking off the areas. So if we have one of the panels on his arm there, for example, and we've added a lot of rough detail and rustic sort of detail to it, we can very easily go in using the masking tool on that particular layer and start unmasking certain areas. So we'll end up with a really flat, clean piece of metal, and then all the rustic sort of broken up metal below it can stand out because we're using masking. So this video is pretty much going over getting the main panels and the pads there for the legs, as you can see, and just roughing them up a bit after they've gone through the flattened process. So you can see there to add more stretches and wrinkles and that sort of thing, just basically to break up the detail between the panels and the underlying material or leather. I've just got the sculpt tool and added that sharp sort of rake texture as a stamp, and you can see there under the yarn that it's just adding a little bit of extra detail as if it was stretched. Well, that's what I was going for there anyway. Again, rough concept, which is fine. So again, this is a tutorial for using the tools and using Mudbox as opposed to creating something awesome. As you can see, it's making the brush size bigger and smaller and just getting in and getting the detail, but obviously rotating around the model constantly and making sure to zoom out to see the overall look as well as getting into the actual detail. You don't want to work on one part of the model for half an hour just to zoom out and realize that it doesn't work well with the rest of the model. So keep pulling out, rotating around. It's how you should be working with these sculpting softwares. Okay, so finishing off the detail on the bottom of the boots there as well, and really just quickly trying to just get this done, to be honest. So racing through it there, as you can see, trying to add the smaller little details. Now all these little details will help in the shaded areas, and then obviously if it looks well without textures, hopefully it will look a lot better with textures once properly placed. As I said, we plan to actually get onto texturing this model as well, so then videos will be done soon enough, I'd imagine, and then we can look at the likes of Topo Gun and actually retopologizing a much lower res model over this guy here, which we can then bring inside of 3ds Max, for example, and start unwrapping it, and then extract out all the normal maps and defuse and all the ambient occlusion maps and everything else that we need. And then we can have a look at actually rigging it. So there's plenty more steps left to do. So see how you're getting on there. As you can see, that tool, it is just a sculpt tool, but the actual stamp that I'm using there is quite good for wrinkles and fingers and that sort of thing. So I can very quickly add a lot to the character's details there. Even on the front there, you can see changing the brush size and then trying to add a small bit of detail. Just especially for the knuckles, like that sort of detail is what will definitely help when you start extracting out the normal maps onto your low res. I don't know about them lines there in between the fingers, but I think it was quite late. Okay, so we'll move on to the next video now. Keep going.